Warm again like it was yesterday. Temperatures around 20 degrees in Manchester today. Nicky Campbell outdid himself on BBC Radio 5 Live this morning, having a mini meltdown, declaring that this is not good, this is not good. Mother Nature is on the run. What a load of bollocks, eh?
Welcome back to the most listened to independent radio show in Europe. It's your Richie Allen Show.
Asher, if you can't have the crack, lads, as they say. Welcome to the show, by the way. How you doing?
It's the Richie Allen Show. Broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
You should have heard Nicky Campbell. If I ever wanted something, if I ever wanted the Blue Fairy to grant me a wish, it was this morning. I wanted to be his co-presenter. I would have hammered him. He was nearly crying, the fakest man in British radio, maybe after James O'Brien. Nicky Campbell, oh, Mother Nature is on the run. This warm weather is not good. We're all going to die. Anyway, joining me this Tuesday, Professor Alan Sked of the London School of Economics, the founder of UKIP, joins the programme to talk a little bit about Brexit, of course. Alan Sked, really great guy. He's been on the programme several times before. He's back today. And in the second hour, I'm joined for a roundup of the news by my old pal Tony Gosling, of course, the presenter of the politics show on BCFM, former BBC journalist as well. Top man is Tony. So it's a packed old show. It's your Richie Allen Show. It is live. Tis live on Fab Radio 2, richieallen.co.uk, trigger warning, .tv, TuneIn Radio, and many more places as well. Yeah. It's all that global warming, you see. It's not good. Piss off, Campbell. Anyway, yeah. He's been in the news doing a lot of virtue signalling lately, Nicky Campbell. He's been talking about adoption. I didn't realise he was adopted. Partly his mother was Irish and wasn't in a position to raise him and all of that. It's been in the news anyway. Nicky Campbell. He's never heard of me. Well, he has. In fact, he tweeted me a couple of times. I had a pop at him a few times. And to be fair to him, he retweeted me. Right, so lots to talk about today. Before we go any further, remember yesterday talking about the new McCarthyism around the myth that anti-Semitism is prevalent in the UK today? Do you remember I talked about how this show, my show, your show, has been criticised for speaking to far-right characters like David Duke in the past? Well, the Jewish Chronicle is at it again today. Jack Summer, the head of news for the Jewish Chronicle, tweeted, "You wouldn't put chips, battered sausages and a lovely battered cod in the Jewish Chronicle. It is a worthless rag now, right? It really is crap now." Then again, so is the Sun and the Mirror and the rest of it, but it's crap. But anyway, Jack Summer is the head of news, and he tweeted this afternoon, so the founder of UKIP is going on a podcast that previously interviewed David Duke and used to be broadcast by David Icke? Okay, said Jack Summer. Of course, Jack Summer has revealed himself not to be fit for purpose as the head of news of any organisation. I wouldn't give him the head of news job at the Waterford Gazette, at the Sesame Street Post. This isn't a podcast. A cursory bit of research, you would have realised, is a live radio show with a massive audience broadcasting on multiple platforms. And David Icke never broadcast this radio show. He streamed it on his website, and he had nothing to do with the editorial or the production because I wouldn't allow it, and nor would he, to his credit. Summer is a muppet. This is all about trying to destroy shows like this by using these sinister tactics, by saying to people, you can't go on to programmes like that. That's where they want to take it, to starve you of guests. But if that ever happened, I'll be here every day by myself, and I'll still have plenty to say. What a moron Summer is. I pointed out to him on Twitter today, Oprah Winfrey interviewed David Duke. Does that mean that everybody who went on Oprah Winfrey's show thereafter shouldn't have done? Because Winfrey spoke to David Duke, and God knows who else she's interviewed over the years anyway. Here's a very serious story. We won't lead with Brexit today. We'll lead with Venezuela, because Russia today has claimed overnight that the United States is ready to invade Venezuela and is mobilizing troops as we speak, you and I. Yes, there is a certain inevitability there. I do agree with that. This is RT last night. It's their 9 p.m. broadcast. Have a listen. They talk about troops, special forces. This is serious stuff.
Russia's Security Council has warned that the US is getting ready to intervene in Venezuela and topple embattled President Nicolas Maduro. Up to now, Washington has only thrown its support behind self-declared President Juan Guaido, slapping sanctions on officials in Maduro's government as well. It's also urged other Western nations to back the removal of the democratically elected president from power. Well, the Secretary of the Russian Security Council now says that US troop movements to Colombia and Puerto Rico are precursors to a military invasion.
Other facts clearly indicate that the Pentagon is strengthening its troops in the region to oust legally elected President Maduro. The Venezuelan people understand this well, hence their reaction, their refusal to accept the goods from the aggressor country and support their president.
Well, the Security Council also added that the humanitarian crisis which Washington claims is plaguing Venezuela is a consequence of American sanctions and embargoes and is being used as a tool to involve itself in Venezuelan domestic affairs. The warnings from Russia come shortly after President Maduro called out the US for preparing to wage a war over Venezuela's vast oil resources. Now, he believes Washington is stirring discontent in his country.
The United States wants Venezuela's oil, and they're willing to go to war for that oil. They're trying to fabricate a crisis to justify political escalation and a military intervention in Venezuela.
Yeah, so the Russian even Security Council is saying that their intelligence shows that the US are basically mobilizing troops and weapons and the tactical things they'll need for a full-scale invasion of Venezuela. Am I saying that you have to take everything the Russian Security Council says at face value? Of course not, but it makes perfect sense. This is what the Zionist neocon lunatics in Washington want. And puppet Trump, the glove puppet Donald Trump, of course. I mean, what do Trump's moronic supporters and fans with their ridiculous MAGA T-shirts and hats, although they can wear what they want? Surely it must be dawning on them now that, like everybody else in history, they've been duped. That Trump is nothing more than a puppet, and he'll quite happily go along with the warmongering and the murdering and the bombing and the destruction without batting an eyelid. Anyway, we'll be talking more about that this week, and no doubt in coming weeks, the appalling Venezuelan, the plans for Venezuela. We'll talk more about that. We might get into some of it with Tony Gosling. Brexit then. Theresa May, the UK Prime Minister, has promised MPs a vote on delaying the UK's departure from the EU and a vote on ruling out a no-deal Brexit if they reject her deal next month, which is likely. Theresa May said this to MPs today. There has been a threat of a revolt by Remain supporting ministers. Basically, what's happened is Remainers in the Conservative Party have gone to Theresa May and said, we are a large number and we will quit the party unless you do what we tell you. May promised MPs a meaningful vote on her Brexit deal by the 12th of March. Very dramatic was the coverage of this afternoon. Kay Burley.
Very good afternoon, all of that to come. Let's start with Theresa May, should we? She made a dramatic U-turn on Brexit this afternoon, telling MPs that they will get to vote on whether to rule out no deal and whether to delay Brexit if they reject her plan next month. Mrs May will put her withdrawal agreement to the Commons by the 12th of March. If it fails, MPs will be offered two separate votes. The first on a no-deal Brexit, the second on whether to request an extension to Article 50, delay the UK's departure beyond the 29th of March. It all means that Mrs May's position has effectively changed from my deal or no deal to my deal or delay.
Yeah, and you can hear Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn very briefly here now, I think. Can we hear them?
Let me be clear. I do not want to see Article 50 extended. Our absolute focus should be on working to get a deal and leaving on the 29th of March. An extension beyond the end of June would mean the UK taking part in the European Parliament elections. What kind of message would that send to the more than 17 million people who voted to leave the EU nearly 3 years ago now. An extension cannot take no deal off the table. The only way to do that is to revoke Article 50, which I shall not do, or agree a deal.
And Jeremy Corbyn.
The real-life consequences of the Prime Minister's cynical tactics are being felt across the country. Factories relocating abroad, jobs being lost, investment being cancelled, thousands of workers at sites across Britain's towns and cities are hearing rumours and fearing for the worst. The responsibility for this lies exclusively with the Prime Minister and her government's shambolic handling of Brexit.
And Beth Rigby is a deputy political editor with Sky News, and this is Rigby summing up what happened today.
Make no mistake about this, the Prime Minister really didn't want to move to this point. As one person familiar with some of the discussions overnight said to me, the Prime Minister was dragged kicking and screaming to that statement where she said she would be prepared to extend Article 50. And
do we really think that Theresa May was dragged kicking and screaming? Theresa May is a Europhile after all. She believes to her bone marrow that the UK should be in the European Union. May's just acting reluctant. She doesn't really care, does she? Anyway.
And delay Brexit if that's what MPs want. And I think the big takeaway for me from that statement is she has now officially moved from it's my deal or no deal to it's my deal or a delay to Brexit, because while she has kept an option of no deal on the table in terms of a vote in Parliament, as you were talking about, Parliament will reject that. They will reject a no-deal Brexit. Her MPs know that. Her Brexiteers know that. Her cabinet know that. She knows that. And so now the focus again is on can she get her deal through Parliament, and if not, Brexit will be delayed. I think that's where we have landed.
Yeah, it's where we've landed, and of course the Labour Party has broken the manifesto pledge from the recent election, the most recent election, of course, last year's election. Was it 2017? Was it now? It's incredible the way things, I don't know. My memory, I'm losing it, to be honest. Anyway, Labour's manifesto pledge, of course, was to honour the referendum result, but they flip-flopped on that now, and it is party policy to pursue a second referendum. What does Jacob Rees-Mogg, terminological inexactitude, darling? What does he think of all this? The hard Brexiteer, member of the ERG, the European Research Group, what does he think about it? What May has said, and if you missed that, in all of that clutter there, May has said, if you reject my deal again, you will then be able to vote on extending Article 50, meaning we won't leave on March 29th, and you will also be able to vote on removing no deal from our negotiating, I suppose, from our teams, our negotiating team won't be able to leave without a deal. We won't leave without a deal. You can stop that as well. I know. I have been off for a few weeks. You do get me. 2 votes, one to extend Article 50, the other vote to get rid of the possibility of a no deal. Anyway, Jacob Rees-Mogg.
If Brexit were to be delayed to change the backstop to the Malthouse Compromise, that would be positive, and to allow time for legislation to get through, that again would be perfectly acceptable. If it's being delayed, which is my suspicion, as a plot to stop Brexit altogether, then I think that would be the most grievous error that politicians could commit. It would be overthrowing a referendum result, 2 general elections, one to call for the referendum, one to endorse the referendum, and would undermine our democracy.
Jacob Rees-Mogg, undermine our democracy. More on this with Professor Alan Sked in a few minutes' time. Facebook has taken down the page of Tommy Robinson. This is Stephen Yaxley Lennon, whatever his name is. And according to the BBC today, he was deemed by Facebook to have been engaged in organised hate. These are amazing terms they've begun to come up with, these terms. Organised hate. Facebook said in a blog post in a blog post that a number of posts on Robinson's page had violated the social network's community standards. It said it hadn't taken the decision to take his page away lightly, but he would not be allowed back. So even if Tommy changes his ways, whatever that means, he won't be coming back. Here's a direct quote. When ideas and opinions cross the line and amount to hate speech that may create an environment of intimidation and exclusion for certain groups in society, in some cases with potentially dangerous offline implications, we take action, said Facebook. The post went on to say Robinson's page has repeatedly broken these standards, posting material that uses dehumanising language and calls for violence targeted at Muslims. He's also behaved in ways that violate our policies around organised hate. So Robinson, Stephen Yaxley Lennon will not be allowed to set up an official page on Facebook or Instagram in the future. Facebook said they'd written to him several times about a number of posts on his page that had violated its community standards, and it did give examples. Facebook said there was a post calling Muslims filthy scumbags. There was a post urging people to terrorise and behead those who follow the Quran. A post urging people to make war with Muslims. Multiple videos depicting individuals being bullied. And in January, YouTube suspended adverts on Robinson's account saying he had broken the site's advertising rules. As far as I know, and I certainly I'm not on Facebook anymore. I left Facebook a year ago, more or less. Don't have anything to do with it. As far as I know, the posts referred to by Robinson were uploaded by people who have liked his page or followed his page. I don't imagine he's put a post out calling Muslims filthy scumbags. I know that's what he thinks, Robinson, of course, but Robinson is too clever to put that on Facebook. I'm guessing it's some of his moronic supporters that have put those things on Facebook. That being said, of course I don't support his page being deleted. Of course I don't support anything else being deleted. I am I'm as committed to Voltaire's sentiment today as I ever was. I don't care how ignorant, how uninformed and how foolish people like Tommy Robinson are. I will defend their right to say what it is they want to say. And I don't support the deletion of his Facebook page. Vile little thug, even though he is. These are strange times. Everybody has been kettled and corralled onto Facebook and to Twitter and to YouTube. And it's very easy now for the powers that be to decide what's okay and what isn't okay, what you can see and what you can't see. And that's what's going on there. That being said, Tommy Robinson has never been any threat to the establishment. He's never exposed anything. He's just a yob with a big mouth. I've got the big mouth. I've never been a yob. Anyway, 21 minutes past the hour. Shall we have a tune? I think we shall have a tune. Amy Winehouse today. Amy Winehouse on the Richie Allen Show. The time is coming up for 24 minutes past the hour. Welcome to the show if you're just joining it. Lots of tweets. I will read them after we've had a good chat with our first guest today. He's no stranger to you. He's been on the programme several times before. He's a former professor. Well, he is a professor emeritus of international history at the London School of Economics. He famously founded the United Kingdom Independence Party, and he's a very interesting and very worthwhile his opinions on Brexit and on the economy and on the future relationship with the European Union. We're going to get into that, some of that today with our guest. We'll welcome him back. He's Professor Alan Sked. He's in Scotland. Alan, thanks for coming back on. How are you?
Well, I'm just recovering from a bad flu, but I'm still alive, yes.
Well, thanks for coming on. Yeah, both of us have been unwell of late. You're in Scotland. Are you recovering up there? Is it nice there today?
I'm recovering, yes. I have a little house in the Scottish Highlands, so I'm up here and just resting, I think.
Fantastic. Before we talk about today's business in Westminster, when I was away, you did a piece for The Guardian where you said that UKIP is such a joke now that it basically should disappear. What's happened to the UK Independence Party?
I don't know. It's very odd. I mean, among all the hubble and the noise, its voice is never heard. I don't know why. There's been no statements that I've read in the press, or I've seen no spokesman on television giving the UKIP point of view, which would be that what's happening is an abomination and that they're betraying the people. But complete silence. They just seem to have disappeared. At one stage, 2 or 3 weeks ago, there's a controversy about Gerald Batten, the leader, trying to make over the party to Tommy Robinson. That blew up, and then since then, there's been no follow-up on that. And it's almost as if UKIP has committed suicide and died. I mean, I don't understand. It may be, I know the media, the BBC and the television media are very biased, and they don't allow the voice of no deal to be heard in any of the discussions on Newsnight or the news programs that we commonly watch. I simply don't know what's happened to UKIP. It's almost as if it's disappeared without a trace.
Were you particularly disturbed by the kind of bromance? I hate these bloody terms, bromance, but anyway, this bromance between Gerard Batten and Tommy Robinson. Now, I've just been speaking about Robinson. I'm an advocate for free speech for everybody, even those I most vehemently disagree with. I don't like Tommy Robinson or a lot of what he has to say, but I wouldn't ban him from speaking. I wouldn't delete his Facebook pages or any of that nonsense. But him and Batten kind of cozying up to him, how did you feel about that, Alan?
Well, I thought it was a bit odd. I don't really know very much about Tommy Robinson. He's a kind of fringe figure. And I know he's commonly regarded as an extremist because of his finding of the English Defence League and what have you. Batten, I think, seems to be very anti-Islamic, and he's described Islam as a death cult. And I think he and Robinson have become concerned with obviously it is a very concerning matter, the grooming of young girls by Pakistani men in the north, and they've made a big issue out of that. But they seem to have done that to the exclusion of everything else. I mean, I don't hear anything from UKIP about Europe.
No, it is. It's a strange time, I suppose, for the party. We'll move away from talking about UKIP. Theresa May said today, as you know, of course, you've been following this closer than anybody, that if in March her deal is rejected again, which is likely, that she will offer votes to Parliament on suspending Article 50 and then a vote on basically eliminating the prospect of a no deal. Is this about where you expected we'd be? Was it always going this way, Alan?
To a certain extent, yes. The real problem is that the majority of MPs have never accepted the referendum result. The people voted no by actually quite a respectable majority, and it was the largest democratic vote in British history, of 17.4 million people voting to take us out. Then the government, which is full of Remainers and led by a Remain Prime Minister, completely, if you excuse the expression, balls up the negotiations and brought back a deal that nobody in their right mind could possibly agree to. Now, since that looks as if it's going to fail again, she can't get the necessary amendments from the EU that she thinks would get it through. The Remain majority in the cabinet are forcing her to say that, well, if it fails, we can't accept a no-deal situation. I mean, the Chancellor and the Remain ministers who have been in charge of the contingency legislation about a no-deal situation have made it sound so dreadful, which it isn't, but they've made it sound so dreadful, they've scared everybody into believing it's a fate worse than death. And therefore, MPs who have voted against a no-deal outcome anyway are now all up in arms saying they're saving the country from disaster, whereas in fact it would actually be quite a good thing if we came out without a no-deal. And now they're talking about extending Article 50. Well, once you're into that game, you can extend it ad infinitum, and you never leave. I can't believe everyone's fed up. It's taken so long already, and now these MPs who don't want us to come out want to extend the negotiations until we're all so fed up with it, will agree to stay in.
How much of that has been a deliberate policy on the part of the European Union, this running it down and obfuscating and behaving in a very difficult way, especially when David Davis was Brexit Secretary? How much of this is kind of age-old EU policy? Get it right down to the wire, scare everybody about the prospect of leaving with no deal, and then eventually the UK blinks and kind of caves in. It seems to have been the European Union tactic all along, Alan.
I think so. The EU tradition is that if people vote against it, then they're forced to change their mind. I mean, when Denmark and Ireland voted against various treaties and referenda, they were told to vote again until they voted yes, which is what happened when the French voted against the 2005 constitutional treaty. They merely renamed it the Lisbon Treaty, and instead of going to a second referendum in France, they rammed it through the French Parliament with the elite there voting for it. They've made life so difficult for us that they've got to a situation where, the Parliament will not accept what they're offering, and Mrs. May is completely demented, thinks she's got a deal which is somewhere near reasonable, but in fact was thrown out by the largest majority in the history of Parliament, and she's still trying to tweak it a little bit and bring it back, whereas it would leave us more or less as members of the EU but without any voting rights. And now the Labour Party wants to do the dirty on the majority of the people. It's betraying its voters, especially in the north. And it wants a second referendum with the choice to remain. I mean, it's looking as if we're gearing up with the prospect of a second referendum in which the choice will be either Mrs. May's dreadful deal that Parliament's already rejected, or the choice to remain in the European Union, which the British people have already rejected. I mean, it really is a ridiculous situation when our free people are told to vote on two things which have already been rejected by Parliament and by themselves.
Is it fascist, Alan?
Supposedly the name of a people's vote and democracy.
As a teacher of international history, you're very familiar with the term fascism. Is this fascism, what we're witnessing today, last week, last month, is it the very definition of fascism? You mentioned the conduct of the BBC. Sky News is just as bad. I witnessed an interview yesterday between Adam...
Sky News is just as bad.
Just as bad, yeah.
But it is a sort of fascism. What you're having is a group of really middle-class people with an international ideology trying to force what is in fact the British working class into accepting their new international order of the European Union. And that is fascistic in my view. Ordinary people, most of the ordinary people who just didn't want any part of this, are being told by a middle-class international elite which has taken over the Labour Party and which has forced Corbyn into line because his party will split otherwise. This international middle-class elite with its supranational ideology of European Union wants to tell the working class that their vote doesn't count for anything, and they have to fall into line, and they have to do what their betters expect of them.
What can be done about it? I get this all the time from people who are sick to their stomachs at what's happening, and they have this feeling in the pit of their bellies that they know that we're never going to leave. I said after the referendum result back in June 2016, 2.5 years ago, I said, look, we'll never leave. I'm an Irishman. I've witnessed it in my own country. We won't be allowed to leave. And people are devastated by what they're witnessing. And they're saying, what is it that we can do? I mean, what else can they do? I mean, take to the streets.
number of things they can do. First of all, they can stop voting for the major parties. I don't know how anybody can vote for the Tory, Labour, Lib Dem parties after this. I mean, they just form part of what Donald Trump calls the swamp, and it has to be drained, and people have to stop voting for the parties who have betrayed the vote. That means other parties will have to take over. And if this isn't happening, and if there's resistance allowing this to happen democratically, then, I fear there'll be civil unrest, as in France. There'll be a yellow vest movement or something like it. And, if we then get told we have to pay billions and billions and billions into the European Union without having any right of representation there, that we won't be on the Council of Ministers, we won't have a commissioner, we'll be lucky we're in the European Parliament. We'll be told what to do, and the Parliament will just accept it. If that's going to be our fate, then, I don't know, I hate to think what might happen, but I think it could degenerate into very bad civil unrest, to say the least.
The Labour Party, as you mentioned, I want to touch on the Labour Party just for a couple of moments. They campaigned during the last general election campaign. One of the key points in their manifesto was that they would honour the result of the referendum. We know that historically, Jeremy Corbyn and Tony Blair, it must be mentioned, when Blair campaigned in Sedgefield in 1983, Blair was basically calling the European Union a tyranny. He really was. People, if they Google that, I know you know this, Alan, but a lot of our listeners won't know it. And here's Corbyn now bowing down, a complete flip-flop, and saying, yeah, we're all up for a second referendum now. Were you surprised by that, given Corbyn's, again, historic scepticism about the EU?
Well, Corbyn is terrified that he's going to preside over the fatal splitting of the Labour Party. It's already started. If he hadn't gone and said he was in favour of an option of a second referendum, probably he would have lost another 30 or 40 MPs to the TIG, the independent group. And that would be the beginning of the end of Labour. I think this is the beginning of the end of Labour anyway, because the working class will know that Corbyn and the Labour leadership have betrayed it. And even those Barry Gardiner and others who were supposedly real Brexiteers are now using the excuse to scare story of no deal being so disastrous that they have to go for a second referendum. It's ludicrous. We haven't implemented the first referendum yet, and yet they're now talking about a second one. And it's going to be such a rigged referendum if it happens, because the option of getting out of the EU again will be off the table. There'll be a referendum between May's deal and remaining as a member of the European Union. Well, May's deal is probably even worse than remaining as a member of the European Union.
Yeah.
So,
Alan, let me jump back in. In the interest of balance, and sadly we don't have any balance today, but some of my listeners might say, okay, the presenter is somebody who, the presenter, as in myself, is somebody who wants to leave the European Union, and he's interviewing Alan Sked, Professor Alan Sked, who is a very well-known Eurosceptic. So, no, you're okay, Alan, don't worry about it. So, in the interest of balance, Remainers might say, listening to this, look, a lot of businesses from different sectors of the business community, small businesses, middle-sized and large businesses, they're absolutely convinced that leaving the European Union is terrible, and that leaving it without a deal is terrible, and that it's going to have a serious impact on their ability to conduct business, and that's going to have an impact on employment in the UK. Why are they wrong? Why are businesses wrong to say we should be really scared of a no deal?
Well, first of all, 96% of British companies don't trade with the EU at all. The vast majority of British businesses aren't involved in EU trade. those which are involved in the EU trade have already had 2.5 years in which to make contingency plans. If they're that bloody clever, they should have made them by now. Also, the governments of the EU countries and the British government have come up with a huge number of detailed contingency plans. And, you know, if we go out without no deal, there should be very little trouble at all. I mean, the head of customs is saying that they'll just wave lorries through. The head of customs in Calais is saying that, you know, there's going to be no problem. It's going to be just the same number of lorries. Everything's going to be done electronically. There isn't going to be an army of little people with clipboards checking goods. It doesn't work like that. It takes about 5 seconds to get a lorry through the customs post at Calais. The whole thing has been heightened up by Remain propaganda. The same way that when the referendum was held, we was told that 800,000 people would lose their jobs the next day.
That's right.
House prices would crash. The GDP would fall by 5%. In fact, we're growing much. Since the referendum, we've done better than the European Union. The European Union is heading for a big recession, maybe for a final implosion. The British economy is doing better than the European one and better than the German one.
The European Union, I believe, and again, sadly we don't have any balance because I can't get Remainers to come on the programme. It's a strange thing, but I can't get them to come on. To me, it looks obvious that because of the trade deficit, the European Union should be fairly nervous about a no-deal Brexit. And by taking that out of the hands of British negotiators, it's a suicidal move. I know you go along with this. Can you help me finally? And thanks for coming on today. I know you're still not 100%, Alan, so thanks for coming back. Why is it that, I mean, is it true, and how easy is it to demonstrate that the EU itself really, really, really fears the UK leaving with no deal?
Well, if it left with no deal, the Germans are saying they would lose at least 100,000 jobs in the car industry. The trouble is, no deal, if it comes, will probably coincide or may coincide with Donald Trump putting 25% tariffs on German cars. The Chinese market for German cars has collapsed. And the huge debts that are building up in Europe. Europe is a mountain of debt to worry about. All of that is causing trouble and will cause trouble in the bond markets. And the world is about probably to enter a recession. And any kind of further recession, I mean, Europe's already in recession. Germany's more or less in recession. Italy is in recession. France is on the verge of recession. Manufacturing production in Europe is plummeting. And, you know, it's all on a nice edge in the EU. And I expect the Eurozone economy to be in a financial crisis sometime in the course of this year.
And you've been, to be fair to you, historically, you've been pretty accurate in predicting those macro and microeconomic trends and global economic trends. Disappointed today, I think. I mean, I'm not surprised. It's how I saw things going all along. I'm going to give you the final word, Alan, but I don't see any way out of it. I know you said people should support those parties that are committed to delivering the referendum result. They should support independent and smaller parties. I don't know how much of a difference that will make. I think we're just going the way of Ireland and Denmark and France, although it's been a much more long, drawn-out process. Do you want to give us a little bit of optimism before we part company today?
Well, we still haven't repealed Article 50. We still haven't extended it. Legally, we're still due to leave the European Union on the 29th of March. If they want to extend the period, then they have to get the permission of the European Union. I suppose they would give it, but I don't think they're very happy with us being, there for a few months, because once we're past May, then Britain has to organise elections to the European Parliament. I don't think they want that. On the other hand, supposing we extend Article 50, the question is, what for?
Yeah.
I mean, is she going to go back and try for more tweaks to the backstop? I mean, what is the purpose of extending Article 50? What will we be negotiating about for the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, or a year? Nobody seems to know. It just seems to be a kind of way of staving off leaving the European Union. So we'll be in limbo. Industry will have more and more uncertainty, another year or 6 months or whatever it is of uncertainty. I don't suppose that will help them very much. And meanwhile, the British people get more and more and more frustrated. And therefore, I think there'll be a political reaction.
Alan, thanks for coming on today from Scotland. Good to hear from you again. First time in 2019. No doubt we'll be talking about it again in the very near future. Continued success with your recuperation there in Bonnie, Scotland. And thanks for your time, Alan. Always love having you on. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Thank you very much. Bye.
It's a pleasure. Bye. Bye for now, Alan. Professor Alan Sked, Professor Emeritus at London School of Economics, the man who founded the United Kingdom Independence Party, as you heard there, live from Scotland. Yeah. He made a good point about the Labour Party. The Labour Party enjoys an enormous amount of support in the north of England. Of course, in traditional working class communities, trade unionist communities, of course it does. And many of these constituencies voted to leave the European Union because working class folks and trade unionists, I don't mean trade union leaders, but members of trade unions, know what membership of the European Union has done to the United Kingdom. You know, the negative impact the EU has had on the UK over the last 40 plus years. And they voted in great numbers to leave. And what Labour is doing, he said, Alan Sked said Corbyn is playing a game. You know, it's a game of trying to appease these Remainers in his own party and on his own shadow front bench and Remainers in the parliamentary party, I should say. But at the same time, it's a very risky manoeuvre. The Labour Party could be wiped out in the next general election for pursuing this policy of a second referendum. Loads of tweets on this, so I'll read some of them now. Faisal tweets that there's nothing strange about not being able to get Remainers on the programme. They are fundamentally against free speech and democratic principles, and they know that the tyrannical EU will get its way. They can just sit back and take it easy. Hashtag Remain treason. Faisal there. Obviously a lot of our listeners would echo that sentiment there. Cartoon Drunk tweets, Richie, the good news and bad news is the light at the end of the tunnel has been permanently switched off. That's the bad news. The good news is I'm wearing a clean pair of boxers today. That's it. I've always expressed my opinion in that I hope that the more tyranny reigns, the more inevitably people will wake up to it. I don't get too despondent about this sort of thing because it's what I expect to happen. I know what it is that is going to happen. I get a lot of things wrong, of course. What I mean is, on decisions like this, you know that they're never going to allow the UK to leave the European Union. And you just hope, in your heart of hearts, that more people will wake up to it and understand that there isn't any such thing as democracy. They are not represented by their local MPs, by their councillors, by their assemblymen and women at all different levels. The elected folks of the various bodies, governments and councils of the country have not gotten to where they are to look after Muggins here and you and to do things that benefit people. No, they're not. They are elected to serve the needs and the desires of tyrants. Nameless and faceless tyrants. That is what they do. Some of them are aware of it. Many of them are not. Most of them are just greedy, grubby little bastards that are in it for the money and they don't see the bigger picture. The bigger picture is there is no such thing as democracy because he or she that controls the money supply controls the world and they don't give an arse who's in power, whether it's the left, the right, the far right, centrist parties, they couldn't care less. They don't care. People have to finally begin to wake up to this. This is the thing. It's the one thing, the money supply, the control of the financial cartels of central banking around the world. People have to understand that. It matters not who you put into Westminster. It really doesn't. And I think the more you see, you know, things like with Brexit and all of that, the more hope I have that people will start to understand it. It will terrify them. Terrified me when I realised what's really going on back in the mid to late 1990s, early 2000s, and I began to see what was going on. It scared the absolute trousers off me. Really did. When I saw how evil and how malevolent it is and how a tiny, tiny cartel is running everything and how easy it is for them to do that. You know? How easy it is for them to orchestrate events and manipulate events. We have the United States of America on the doors of a country, Venezuela, which has not attacked any of its neighbours, let alone has it attacked or threatened the United States. But the neocon Zionist nutcases are ready to lay waste to Venezuela. Now, when Donald Trump was elected president of the United States, you see, and I'm talking now to the red-necked, spiky-haired fucking goons that go around wearing MAGA hats and fooling themselves and lying to themselves that Donald has drained the swamp and that Donald has gone after all the paedophiles. No! When he campaigned for election, he swore that he would end US interventionism. He swore the days of the United States acting as the world's policeman were over. Wake up to it. The same lie that was told by Bill Clinton. The same lies that were told by Obama. And the same lies told by W and all the rest of them. When you voted for Donald Trump, you didn't give him a mandate to go and blow Venezuela off the fucking map. It never entered your head. It was never discussed. Hey, listen, vote for me and I'll go to Venezuela. Kill a few 100,000 people. That wasn't discussed. That wasn't in the manifesto. When are they going to wake up to it? Right? Patrick tweets, in order to introduce pure democracy, a single or two issue movement would be necessary to gain power and legislate to outlaw political parties. I would try and influence Nigel Farage and his party or a Brexit party to include this as an umbrella objective. And Patrick, you won't be surprised to hear me say to you, I fundamentally disagree with you. You cannot change this world through the ballot box. There is no right politician. I don't mean right as in on the right. There is no right man or woman. There were over the years. They were murdered. Or they were blackmailed out of existence. Or disappeared. You know, or their countries like Salvador Allende and Hugo Chavez were destroyed economically or militarily. There is no man or woman you can put into Westminster that's going to change everything. There is no man or woman you can put in Pennsylvania Avenue that will change things. It's impossible. The whole system has to be torn down. That's what has to happen. It's as simple as that. You know? I guess many of Trump's supporters are alive to it and awake to it. But the thing about narcissism and people and the way people are today, they haven't the courage to face up to it and say, you're absolutely right. I was fooled. I was fooled yet again. Remember Michael Rivero, one of the most honest people I've ever interviewed on this program, you know, admitting he was fooled by Obama. Jim Fetzer said he was fooled by Obama. And then Jim was fooled by Trump, but not anymore. You know, off to Venezuela now, mobilizing troops, the tanks, the weapons to go and wreak hellfire and brimstone on a country that is no threat to anybody. Right. Here we go again. 6 minutes, 5.5 minutes to the top of the hour. Hi to David Stanford. How you doing, David? Hi to Mwinga. I know I've said that. What I just said there, I know I've said it a million times, but you have to keep saying it to people. You know, until it gets through to them. Andy tweets, democracy's a sham. Whoever you vote for, same shit, different arseholes. Yes. 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 It's as simple as that. Hi to the cat is back. Hi to In This Together, who says, what is the point of supporting any political party? Even those who supported UKIP were betrayed and left in the lurch. All parties with any chance of power take their instructions from Bilderberg, says at In This Together. Thank you for that. Hi to Andrew Bell. Hi to Tiger. Keep the tweets coming in. It's that Richie Allen Show on Twitter. We're going to be speaking with Tony Gosling in a few minutes' time. We won't be talking about Brexit necessarily. There are lots of other things to get into with Tony as well. I'm looking forward to doing that. In the meantime, I'm going to pause for a breath and to play some Don Henley, one of the good old boys, on your Richie Allen Show, broadcasting live on Fab Radio 2, triggerwarning.tv, TuneIn Radio, and richieallen.co.uk. It is the 26th of February, Tuesday's programme. When I say it's always good to be with you, I mean it. Back with plenty more. This is The Boys of Summer, another scorching day in the northwest of England. This song is kind of appropriate, eh? Don Henley on the Richie Allen Show. How you doing, Paul Sweeney? Thanks for the tweet, Paul. Richie, all governments are subsidiaries of the extremely wealthy, tweets Paul. Thanks, Paul, for that. Hi to William Henderson. How you doing, William? Richie, when was there ever real democracy? Well, not in any country I've ever lived in, William, that I'm aware of anyway, mate. Thanks for that. Rich tweets, the media, the mainstream media is like a protective bubble over the whole corrupt system. Cartoon Drunk came back to say that he bets the United Kingdom is secretly preparing and training the riot squads for a yellow vest protest here in the future, just like in France. Maybe you're right. Bit of democracy, says Faisal, broke out in Iran once. Mohammed Mossadegh, of course, but the CIA soon put a stop to that and put a Shah in its place. That's right. It's a story that everybody should know. What happened in Iran, 1953. British Petroleum and the intelligence agencies of the United States and the UK. It's a tyranny. That's what it is, you see. But nobody's been taught that in school. What are they teaching children in high schools in England? I know it's secondary schools in England, I know. And in American high schools. They're teaching them about kings and queens, and they're teaching them about Napoleonic wars, and they're teaching them about World War I and World War II. Maybe a bit of Vietnam. That's what they're teaching them. They're not talking to children in high schools about when the CIA went into Central America. They're not telling them about when the CIA destroyed the progress, the wonderful country that Iran was turning into, where there was money for everybody and education for women and children and everything else that was wonderful under Mossadegh. They're not learning this stuff. And as children's brains are destroyed by teaching them about same-sex relationships and about gender politics, and they're glued to their fucking mobile phones, the children of their own volition are not going to go and find this stuff out. What are we doing? What have we been doing? Why did we do that to Vietnam? Why did we kill 4 million people in Vietnam? The Vietnamese never done fuck all to us, did they? But they're not going to find this stuff out. Do you remember the Vietnam films in the 1980s? Do you remember Missing in Action? Do you remember that? Do you remember that bollocks? And Rambo, First Blood. I mean, Rambo, First Blood was a brilliant book and a brilliant film with Sly. You know, where the horrors of war and killing innocent people in villages were revealed. And then Rambo 2, of course. Forget First Blood. Off he went to Vietnam and he released all these poor POWs being tortured by these Vietnamese people, missing in action. That's the crap we got in the 80s. But at least we knew that was bollocks. What are children learning today in schools? What are they learning about these things, these important historical happenings and why they really happened? I mentioned Chile, September the 11th, of course. I don't mean September 11th, 2001. I mean September the 11th in Chile. Right? Salvador Allende. Find out about that. Talked about it before I got sick. Find out about Hugo Chavez and what really happened in Venezuela when Chavez began to lift millions of people out of poverty. Find that stuff out. and share it with people. You know? 3 minutes past the hour. Faisal, I've got Faisal on the brain today. Tony Gosling is going to join the programme in a few minutes' time, and we're going to talk about a number of different things. I don't think we'll get into Brexit too much. Here's a story before, say it for me, before Tony joins the programme. Here's something that I've spent a lot of time talking about, but not just on the radio. I've spoken a lot about this over the years in conversations with friends and colleagues and ex-colleagues. And I've also talked a lot about this during those years when I was teaching radio production to people. I talked a lot about it. I talked a lot about media plurality and the death of media plurality. And here's a story on the BBC which is just heartbreaking. It's a story which is breaking this afternoon. Global Media has announced it will launch UK-wide national breakfast shows on Capital, Heart and Smooth Radio. Global says that it will be creating the 3 largest commercial radio breakfast shows in the UK with 4.8 million, 3.7 million and 2.7 million listeners respectively each week. So why is this of any interest to me, Richie? I hear you cry. Well, because it means that Global will be further reducing locally produced programmes with more than 100 jobs at risk due to the changes. Ofcom has approved the move. Well, of course it would. Ofcom is not fit for purpose. It is as corrupt an organisation as any organisation in any sector in this country that has ever existed. What does it mean, Richie? Why are you ranting on about it? Well, you see, many years ago when companies like Bauer Media and Global Media were allowed to buy up local radio stations all over the country, I talked about years ago the devastating impact that would have on democracy, which never really existed. But on the news, on independent reporting, I said it's going to be a disaster when you allow 1 or 2 companies buy up all the radio stations around the country. You see, back in the day, your local radio station was usually owned by a businessman or a businesswoman with connections to the town or the village or the community or whatever. They ran it. An independent businessman or woman ran a commercial station to make money, obviously, through the sale of advertisement. But what was great about local commercial radio stations was that those local commercial radio stations were usually staffed by local journalists and local people. And when Tony Gosling joins me in a minute, I will be getting into this with him because it's a breaking story. So your local radio station, owned by a local businessman or woman, was staffed with local producers, local presenters, local journalists, investigating stories, talking about things of importance and of interest to people in their community. And what did you get, dear listener, back then? What did you get? Amazingly, you got a diverse and wide range of opinions and views. That's kind of ironic now because diverse has become a dirty word. Because elitists and globalists want to push diversity on people now. Force it down their fucking throats. Whereas years ago, you naturally got diversity. You got opinions from everywhere. You had mid-morning talk radio programmes where local people could phone in and say anything. And you had different presenters with different points of view. But it all ended when Global and Bauer, in England particularly, were allowed to buy up all the local radio stations. And this decision today by Ofcom to allow Global to basically get rid of dozens and dozens of radio programmes and corral people or direct people towards 3 national breakfast radio shows, which will be fucking garbage now. I mean, they will be garbage. They will be presented by no marks. Muppets without a single fucking brain cell in their heads. and they will sit there in the mornings and laugh and giggle at stupid things. They will play the most wretched fucking music, and they will talk to you about Celebrity in the fucking Jungle or whatever it's called. They'll talk to you about Big Brother. Not anymore. I don't think anybody watches that. They'll talk to you about Love Island and all that crap. And interspersed between all of that shit and all that absolute dross talk between the co-presenters, which will be a man and a woman, or a trans man or a trans woman, in between all of that, you will have mind-numbingly fucking boring interviews with Z-list celebrities. That's what you're going to get. But that's not what you used to have when local radio stations had content that was tailored to the local area. And without forcing it on anybody, I have to repeat this, without forcing diversity of opinion on anybody, you got it naturally. Because people phoned up, they had their say, from all walks of life, all colours, all creeds, faiths, of course, creeds. This is disgusting, this, you know. But it's inevitable. It's inevitable. 5-6 major corporations own about 90% of the world's media now. Plurality is dead. And I want to get into this with Tony Gosling. Unless Tony's forgotten that he's coming on the programme. I've not seen him there. He should be there, but I haven't seen him as of yet. So we'll give him a ring. It's easy there. We'll bring him on. So there's my little rant for today. Right. You have to laugh, because if you don't laugh, it'll kill you. It'll drive you to an early grave, is what it'll do. No sign of Tony just yet. 10 minutes past the hour it is, by the way. I've got plenty to tell you if I don't get Tony on today. But he's ordinarily one of the most reliable guys in the business, so we'll give him a few minutes and we'll see what's going on. In the meantime, you can always do, when all else fails, you can always play a tune. So that's what they're doing to your media, you see. This is the Richie Allen Show. Genesis, Land of Confusion, back in 3. Right, welcome back. No sign of Tony Gosling there. I did tell you earlier on, there's a lot to get into with Tony. In my absence, I hadn't realised, but Ofcom, which is the media regulatory authority here in the UK. Ofcom is an abbreviation of the Official Communications Act. It regulates media, broadcast media in the UK. The media, print media, broadcast media. Broadcast media, yeah, predominantly. Anyway, what's happened in the last few weeks, I wasn't aware of it, but Ofcom has launched an investigation and has been investigating Tony Gosling's programme, which is broadcast on BCFM in Bristol. It's a 2-hour weekly politics programme called The Politics Show. It's an excellent programme. I've said this before and I mean it. No sycophant have I ever been or will I ever be. And I don't endorse much, as you know, but I think his programme is excellent. Tony worked for the BBC for many years as a journalist, and he's a very good journalist. I first came to know about Tony when he was writing about and talking about the 7th of July bombings of 2005, when he'd done a terrific amount of research into the claims made on the day, the many things that didn't add up about the 7th of July bombings. He'd done some sterling work there. And the BBC ran a programme called The Conspiracy Files. And along with many other people like Nick Collerstrom and others, they interviewed Tony. And I got to know him then. I was in Spain at the time, and I started bringing him on the programme. I've always found him very good value, Tony. He's a very dependable journalist. Won't make a claim unless he has material evidence to submit to support that particular claim. He's very good. Like myself, I will never claim something to be an absolute fact unless I can prove it. I express opinions on things, of course, but I often... I will then later on come back and say, well, look, I've found something else out and I've got to revise my opinion. But I won't claim something to be a fact unless I know it to be a fact. But what's happened is a director of a firm called UK Lawyers for Israel. UK Lawyers for Israel. I wonder, are there UK ice cream men for Israel? If you're listening to this and if you're a Mr. Softy, if you're an ice cream truck operator, why don't you fucking form a group called Ice Cream Truck Drivers for Israel? Sell ice cream and start screaming at people that they're anti-Semitic if they don't give you the money or the proper change. If you don't have the proper change for the 99, you're a fucking racist. That's what we should start doing. Anyway, the UK Lawyers for Israel supporting Israel with legal skills. Fucking idiots. I've never met them, but they must be pure idiots, these guys. They've complained about the politics show presented by Tony Gosling. And the excellent politics show is now, or has been, investigated by Ofcom. And Tony told me last night a decision is expected on Thursday of this week. So I'm going to read you from the UK Lawyers for Israel story, because they've got a website, these morons, and they are, I shouldn't be like this. I know I'm supposed to be a professional broadcaster and a real journalist. It's a bit childish of me. It's a bit churlish, a bit childish. It's a bit immature, but fuck it. I'm having a sweary day. I'll be immature today. They're obviously cretins, these UK Lawyers for Israel. You know, Israelis are doing okay, I think, in terms of access to legal help. I think jurisprudence is working out well for the Israelis. Why wouldn't you want to offer legal aid for Palestinians? Anyway, let me read you. Ofcom has launched an investigation into a Bristol radio politics programme following a submission by a UK Lawyers for Israel director that the politics show was being used for the propagation of conspiracy theories and extremist views. Bristol Community FM, BCFM, has a 2-hour weekly politics show hosted by Tony Gosling. A typical programme on the 23rd of November last year included the following allegations. Allegation 1, that the Manchester Arena bombing was carried out by MI5 in league with the Rothschild family. Let me just address that. Tony Gosling, like myself, is well aware of the fact that the man alleged to have carried out the bombing in Manchester on the 22nd of May 2017, was it? 2017 was it? I think it was. The man alleged to have done that was a man called Salman Abedi. His father, Ramadan Abedi, worked for MI6 and was paid by MI6 as part of a team that he headed up to assassinate Colonel Gaddafi in Libya in the mid-1990s. So I know that Tony Gosling would have been talking on his programme about the very strange and weird coincidences around the character Salman Abedi, who's supposed to have killed people in Manchester. Now, people died in the arena. I know some of our listeners, I know, you can say what you want, you can think what you want. I'm entitled to my opinion. Some of the people listening to this programme will go batshit crazy now. It was a hoax. It wasn't. It wasn't a hoax. People died there. I know this for a fact. Right? So we're entitled to know what really happened. The British media, with the exception of The Guardian, didn't think it was worth mentioning to their readers and to their listeners that a man whose father was a agent called Agent Tunworth, Ramadan Abedi, worked for MI6 and was part of a plot to kill Gaddafi. How incredibly coincidental that is. That's what Tony Gosling would have been talking about. Did Tony Gosling blame the Rothschilds for the Manchester Arena bombing? I doubt it very much. I'd have to hear the audio. But Tony Gosling is not a moron. And I doubt he said that the Rothschilds had anything to do with it. What else is Tony alleged to have said that pissed off the UK Lawyers for Israel? That Israel is the most dangerous country in the Middle East. It's the most dangerous fucking country in the world. Because Israel is that little dickhead on the school playground. The little weedy guy who's got the big stupid bully standing alongside him. And the big stupid bully is too thick to know that he's being manipulated by the little guy. The little guy is Israel. The big thick bully is the United States of America. Israel is the most dangerous country in the Middle East. Tony had Joseph Wages on, or quoted Joseph Wages, that the Illuminati uses degree rituals and oaths in secret societies to infiltrate and control governments to bring about a globalist new world order. But that's absolutely true. Every word of it is true. Maybe they might report me to Ofcom. Tough shit, Paddy. I'm not bound by the rules and regulations of Ofcom. There you go. So that's it. So Ofcom is investigating Tony Gosling for speaking about things. He had Miko Peled on, the general's son. We know Miko Peled. We've had him on. He's an Israeli. He's been on this programme. And it was said, this is what they're pissed off about now, the UK lawyers for Israel. It was said on Tony's programme by Miko Peled that Israeli children are indoctrinated and Palestinian children are intentionally killed by Israelis in Gaza. Again, that's absolutely true. It's fucking true. Very interesting to see the Ofcom decision on Thursday, won't it? Won't it? And they go on to basically defame Tony, and they quote a guy called Jonathan Turner, the chief executive of the UK Lawyers for Israel, who said, "We identified and analysed 14 breaches of the Ofcom code in a single episode of a programme. This must be a cause for alarm. Ofcom should ensure that an extremist is not permitted a platform to spread his message of conspiracy and hate." No extremist is Tony Gosling. He's an excellent journalist who's doing his job. He's asking questions. Very pertinent questions. He's introducing men like Miko Peled, who've got things that we should be hearing. We should be listening to him. Shlomo Zand. Should be listening to these guys. That's what he's doing. And he's expressing his opinion that they intentionally murder children in Gaza. Well, of course they do. Operation Protective Edge in 2014, they bombarded Gaza from the air, knowing the children were going to be killed. Over 500 children were. In total, more than 2,000 people were. That is intentionally murdering people and children. Yes. Yes. Sorry for the very short bit of dead air. There, my friends. I'm just typing a message there. I don't think Tony's absence today might be connected to this Ofcom investigation. And if it is, fair enough. I will kick him in the balls for not telling me if that's the case, because he's left me high and dry. But you know, I've got a big mouth. I can talk anyway. So the UK Lawyers for Israel have complained to Ofcom. Ofcom are investigating. Let's see what they say. Yeah. Yo. These are strange times. You see that goon from the Jewish Chronicle today trying to prevent Alan Sked from coming on my programme. Because Alan Sked, the London School of Economics, he shouldn't come on my programme because I interviewed David Duke in the past. Thankfully, Alan Sked couldn't give a shit and came on today as usual. And will come on again in the future. This is what they're doing, you know. Asking questions about the Manchester Arena bombing. There are a million questions to be asked about the man alleged to have committed the atrocity, and his lineage, his parentage, his heritage, his dad, who was known to MI6, who worked for MI6. Massive questions, and Tony Gosling is only doing his job. Look, I'm not going to get Tony on today. So I'm going to leave you on that rant. Don't cry. It's 90 minutes today. It'll be 2 hours tomorrow. I'm going to leave you because I've nothing else to add to that. And I am just back, and I am easing my way back into it after a pretty grave illness. So I'm going to love you and leave you. I'm going to leave you on that bombshell. And Tony might be on with me tomorrow. He might come on Thursday when the decision is announced by Ofcom. But these are tyrannical times. Yes, Richie, that's a catchphrase. You keep saying it. You keep repeating yourself, Richie. Something you admonish other broadcasters for doing. Yes, I fucking do. But I'm going to keep repeating it. It is a tyranny that a bunch of arsehole lawyers can demand that a programme is blocked or banned because they don't like what the presenter is saying. How about go on the programme with him and take him on? I say it every week to Zionists. I'll treat you with respect. I'll treat you with compassion. I'll treat you like a mate that I'm having a beer with. I won't insult you. I won't mock you. I'll give you plenty of time to speak and to say your piece. Rather than hide on Twitter like the motherless fucking cowards you are, come on the programme and debate me like a man. Be a man! Grow a pair of balls and be a man. That's it for the programme today. Going to leave you with the rather gentle chimes of Can't You See from the Marshall Tucker Band. That closes out the Richie Allen Show for Tuesday, February the 26th. Thanks for listening. Thanks to Alan Sked. Sorry we didn't get to hear from Tony Gosling. I don't know where he is. I'll figure it out and we'll get him back on again real soon. See you tomorrow then, eh? 5 o'clock usual time. Programme will be on Podomatic. It'll be on YouTube soon and everywhere else as well. Back tomorrow. Look after yourselves and one another.